Good morning, everyone. Welcome to NorthStar Community. So glad to be here. Always fun to be here talking about recovery, one of the greatest, toughest journeys in our lives, but well worth it. So today I'm going to talk about omnipotence and impotence. Seems like kind of an odd combination there. And I will tell you, this is one of these subjects that I can see it, sometimes a little hard to talk about. But I do think we can talk about Jesus just for a minute on this. The one thing he was never was either one of those. If you ever notice in the Bible how every time that people would start, like crowds would start gathering around him, you ever notice how he would do something to really hit us pretty hard about us as humans? He would find something. I always think about how he did that because what happened was people were starting to see him in the wrong light. He was here for a spiritual recovery, a spiritual kingdom, and getting our spirits right, and people kept wanting to have him become the king. And he knew that that was not what he was here for. And so he did a great job of never being omnipotent, and he certainly was never impotent, as we know, for several times when he got angry. But I think it's a good example. I always think about the rich young ruler as one that has always made me uncomfortable. Because here's a guy that comes and says, I live my life right. I'm doing what I'm supposed to. What else do you need me to do? And Jesus basically just was I think, very difficult and almost felt judgmental. But what Jesus was saying was, you're still looking at you. You're still talking about what you've done right, and all these things, and the fact is that we don't do things well because we get full of ourselves, and that's what omnipotence and impotence really is about. And so I think I pulled up Matthew 26 here real quick to talk about someone who at times had high levels of omnipotence, was Peter. Now Peter was awesome. We revere him, one of the 12 disciples, and he was, he little hot-headed and things like that. So Jesus is just telling him that he's going to be betrayed, that the Son of Man is going to be put to death. And Peter breaks in and he says, even if everyone else falls to pieces on account of you, I won't. Don't be so sure, Jesus said. The very night before the rooster crows up the dawn, you will deny me 3 times. Peter protested. And if I had to die with you, I would never deny you. All the others said the same thing. And of course, we know what happened. Peter denied Jesus 3 times. So the point is, we put ourselves in such bad situations when we become omnipotent. And usually we become omnipotent because we feel impotent. So how's that? I hope I get that straight the rest of the day when I'm talking here. So here we're talking about addiction recovery. And I love this quote. I use it quite a bit, but I think it's such a great one. This is by Nora Volkow, who's a physician, and I don't know if she's still director of National Institute of Drug Abuse, but she was when she was quoted. She goes, how can we comprehend the concept of a person who wants to stop doing something but cannot despite the catastrophic consequences? We're not speaking of little consequences. These are catastrophic consequences, and yet they cannot control their behavior. That's pretty powerful, but it's true. For all of us that are in recovery, we know the problems we've created in our lives and created in others. And at NorthStar, the beauty of NorthStar is we take a very, graceful route here. We don't see addiction as a willpower thing. We don't see people who are addicted as bad. Now, certainly a lot of our behaviors aren't good. But the fact is, we know that God loves each and every one of us. We know that God has forgiven us. And we just hope that for you out there, that if you're still struggling with those things, just stop pounding on yourself. Stop shaming yourself, because that's the impotent side of us that we want to stop. I read this quote every once in a while. Got this from Patrick Carn, a great addiction recovery psychologist. And this is where I kind of got this from, kind of put it with my words, but I've never had an addict tell me I'm wrong here. But it fits the impotent thing. I assume abandonment from those that love me due to my addictive behaviors. Because I assume abandonment, I will do everything I can to alienate the people around me. So our omnipotence and impotence is in full going here. I hate what I'm doing. I hate being addicted, but I cannot stop. I am consumed by my addictive behaviors, and I will do everything to keep them alive. So again, when we talk about addictive behavior, which we're talking about addictive thinking, always remember the purpose of addictive thinking, it's very effective. Its purpose is to keep us addicted, to keep us in our world of addiction, because our brain has said, we now must do this, right? So, I live with bravado. I live with omnipotence. I'm in charge. I can quit anytime I want. I only do this because I want to. I'm doing this because I'm too stressed. You know, I got bigger problems than everybody else in the world. You hear what I'm saying, right? That's omnipotence. And I live with bravado, and it looks like I have everything under control and need no one. No one's out there. Everybody's hurt me. Nobody understands my pain. I'm the most stressed person on the planet, blah, blah, blah. But in reality, I live in absolute fear of being alone and losing those that love me. The healthy people in my lives who actually love and care about me, I try to hurt because I know they're going to leave me. And they probably should. Since I assume abandonment, I will do everything I can to hurt and alienate those that love me. But here's the most important part. Yet, abandonment is the last thing I want, but my addictions are stronger. So, I read this quote. I thought it was pretty good. Impotent personalities are arrogant, expedient, and relish dependency on others. Protection, constant care, continual accommodation, and freedom from unpleasurable stresses of any description. They have inflated self-worth. Their focus is on personal desires. Their thinking is capricious. They are rarely thankful for support and kindness from others. We just kind of expect it. They have inflated self-esteem and pliable consciences. That means they can justify anything. They blame others for their own deficiency. They quickly end relationships when disappointed. They can be oppositional. They are squeaky wheels who want oil. We usually give them the oil. How does that sound for a fun way to live? And that was by a Dr. Adams. So as you can hear, with omnipotent and impotent thinking, we behave as if we have control of the world, we're in charge of our lives. But we all know, as addicted people, we know that's anything but true. In fact, the fact is, deep down, we know that we actually have pretty messed up everything. But we want to look like we have it. So I like this. This is Romans 1 I found. Again, this is the Message version. So let me read this. But the basic reality of God is plain enough. Open your eyes, and there it is. By taking a long and thoughtful look at what God has created, people have always been able to see what their eyes as such can't see. Eternal power, for instance, and the mystery of his divine being. So nobody has a good excuse. What happened was this. People knew God perfectly well, but when they didn't treat him like God, refusing to worship him, they trivialized themselves into silliness and confusion so that there was neither sense nor direction left in their lives. They pretended to know it all. That would be omnipotent again. But were illiterate regarding life. They traded the glory of God, who holds the whole world in his hands, for cheap figurines, or in our cases, for substances, compulsive behaviors, social media, blah, 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 and codependent relationships, right? So, God who holds the whole world in his hands for cheap figurines, you can buy at any roadside stand. Sound familiar at all? So, think about, this is pre-step one thinking. So step one, we basically say, I've figured it out. I've lost control of my life. My life has become unmanageable. There is stuff in my life that is more powerful than me now. That definitely does not go with omnipotent and impotent thinking, right? So most people addicted eventually lose control over their lives. Yet they insist they can control it, right? Although their lives have become grossly unmanageable, they steadfastly insist that they still are in charge. So if you're sitting at home by yourself, you can raise your hand on this if it's true. How many of us in here have said, I can quit anytime I want? I'm in charge of it. I don't have to do it. Like we were having so much fun the other night. I was making fun of everybody, including myself, so you all know that. We were talking about how, as a society, our social media, our digital world has created so much anxiety in our world, which I'm going to talk about soon. And so everybody's in there going, well, I can, I only look at stuff for like 10 minutes. And of course, we were all laughing because we sound just like someone who's using alcohol, right? Well, how many beers did you have? 2. And I told him, I said, when I hear 2, I know that really means 6, right? And so how many minutes were we on social media? Well, I was only on for an hour, which means 6, right? And so the point, we were making fun of this, but it's true. Pre-step 1 means I haven't got this figured out yet. I haven't figured out that what I'm doing to cope with the pain I'm trying to avoid and all that kind of stuff, I haven't figured out that actually I'm not in control anymore. I still think I am, right? Like, how many times have any of you said this? Like we were talking to someone the other day, and we're saying, how much marijuana are you smoking again? I only paid $40, right? Well, how long did that last? It lasts a long time. Well, how much are you smoking? I only smoke once a day. Well, that doesn't count at noon when I was smoking. It didn't count before I went to work that I smoked. And it doesn't count all the time afterwards, right? You see how we try to tell ourselves we're in charge of our lives when the fact is we have lost that, but we haven't figured it out yet. So everyone around us knows it, right? All the family and friends are sitting there going, what do they need to see before they'll figure this out? How many times have I said, if you don't stop, you're going to die? And we go, okay, I'll quit, right? I think, what do you say? We don't say, a lot of times we'll say, well, you know what? I can quit whenever I want. And we all know it's not true. Or I'll have someone say, and I've been in NorthStar group before where someone will come and say, I'm never drinking the rest of my life. And you can just see everybody just go, because we know that's going to last about 2 days. So although your life or my life has become grossly unmanageable, we steadfastly insist that we're still in charge, right? I don't have to use. I use because I want to. I don't order Amazon every day, a couple times a day because I have to. It's because I want to. Or it's for reasons that are necessary. I'm ordering important things. And I got to keep Amazon going because they're barely making it right now, right? But what do we do when we think we're in charge? What do? We minimize our usage or our acting out, and we maximize the reasons why, right? Like I always love the people who come to me and always say, there's no one more stressed than an addict. Your life's the most stressful in the world. Nobody else in the world has ever had stress but you, right? So I was reading this interesting article, and it says that there's 3 elements for omnipotence, and it's sensitivity to the needs of people around us, an exaggerated belief in our power to fill those needs, and the expectation that we, and not they, are responsible for filling those needs. So if you're looking for codependency, I just told you what it is, right? We actually believe that we can fix other people. We actually believe that we can control people around us. We can do all these things because we are so omnipotent. We are so powerful, right? So we have this illusion of control, this delusion of omnipotence. I have unlimited power, right? Look at me. I mean, I can drink 12 beers in one night, and I'm still doing good. If you drank 2, you wouldn't be. You see how powerful I am? Do you see how distorted that is? I mean, you get the point here. Eventually, as we all know in our recovery world, is that we eventually lose control. We lose control of our lives. That's pre-step 1, because we still haven't admitted that we have lost control. We continually insist upon the fact that I still am in control of my life. And so it's hard for us when we start going, you know what? I think I'm starting to lose control of my life. This is my 4th time in jail. This is the 5th time that I've hurt someone I love. You go on and on, right? But one of the problems is for many of us is it isn't that like a lot of people before they get in recovery, they'll say, well, I don't believe in God. I don't need this higher power stuff. You know, AA, NorthStar, you guys talk about God all the time. I'm an atheist. I don't believe in that stuff. But the fact is, most of us actually do believe in God. But there is one problem with a lot of us is not only do we believe in God, we actually think we are God. We think we can control everything. We think we're in charge of everything. We think that we have the ability to control all these things. But the fact is, if you really think about it, we're not in control over a lot of things. I mean, you know, we talk about all the time is, you know, do you believe that you have control on your life and the decisions you make internally or what creates your life, or are you a victim to life? Well, we certainly believe the better way to go is to believe you have agency and you're self-actualized and you can, you know, with God in your life, you can have a great life, right? But the fact is, a lot of things that we don't have control over, and I think COVID last year might illustrate to us in some ways how little control we have at times. But here's the thing that kills us, and we got to understand, not having control on everything doesn't mean that you're bad. It doesn't mean that you're weak. It means that you're realistic. Like I always tell people, I know that people don't like me saying this, but I always see Jesus as this guy who probably had a great sense of humor, right? So my theory is when he was sitting there and the Pharisees were coming, trying to trap him and trying to get all, and they said, what are the two, the most important laws? And he goes, what he said was, get rid of anything that's more important than me in your life and love yourself enough to love your neighbor. Now, my attitude is when he said that, he knew we weren't going to do that. I have had debates in my office with people telling me that they've done it, that they have got rid of everything in their life that's more important than God. And I'm like, there's no way. I don't want to hurt your feelings here, but I don't think any of us have done it, except for me, of course, right? But the point is, you can't. I don't think God knew when he told us that we weren't going to do it. He knew I wasn't going to be able to do that. We always use the example of St. Augustine. We said, God's grace is free. All you got to do is have open hands. But what do? We go, okay, yeah, I want that grace. But I do like doing these things. Right? Because we start to believe that we're in charge. And if we're not in charge, there's something flawed and wrong with us. And I think the great analogy is we don't have that much control in our lives. And the minute that we can turn it over to God, things get a whole lot better. I mean, think of all the. I always think one of the things I always tell families. I said because families become omnipotent too. Let's say that you're a family member out there watching this, and your child is addicted. I hate to break it to you, there's not one thing you can do for them, except maybe do nothing. That's hard to hear, right? And so Dr. Tversky in Addictive Thinking has such a great line for this. When you intervene, when you get involved, when you get in the way of God's plan, which usually involves pain, all we're doing is prolonging the inevitable. That's all we're doing. For all of us that are recovered, you and I both know, the only way you made it was when everybody around you finally quit doing for you. When you had no choice in the matter, you were going to die or you were going to get better. That's when we get better. When that omnipotence gets ripped away from you, when you can't keep doing it, I don't care all the stuff that you've done and not done and all that. We talk about your childhood trauma and all that stuff. It is so legitimate. But at the end of the day, it's your job to get better. And being omnipotent and impotent would be that you go out and I can do whatever I want because I'm angry and I'm going to continue to destroy my life. But the reason I'm doing it is because I had a bad childhood. No, that doesn't work. You're an adult now. I think the best example of this is I have a case of bronchitis and you tell me not to cough today. Right? That's how much control we have when we are addicted. I hate to break it to you, but what you've done is you've lost all your control when you're addicted. The only thing that you're doing at this point for you that are out there addicted right now is you're hiding, you're lying, you're living in secrecy, and you're in a great deal of pain. So what we have to understand here is it's okay. It's okay. It's not okay for you to continue, but where you are right now, if you're saying, I've got to stop, I can't do it on my own, I've got to figure out a way to do this, God help me, now you're where you need to be. If you say, I'm going to stop doing these things, I'm going to start tomorrow, not today, tomorrow, I don't want to do it today. I'm going to start tomorrow, and I'm not going to overeat. I'm not going to get on social media. Well, I'm going to get on social media, but I'm going to get it for just a little bit for important things. You see what I'm saying? You can't do this on your own, and it's okay. That's the point. Omnipotence keeps us from recovering because we have now created this illusion, or I call it delusion, that because I can't stop on my own, because I can't quit doing these things, there's something terribly flawed about me. That's not true. It's not a character weakness. It's not a moral failure on your part. The moral failure, though, is when we deny how messed up we are. So when we're in our omnipotent thinking, we're saying, I cannot be powerless. I can't do that. If I'm powerless, I won't be able to exist. Recovery people say if we have no control over our hurts, habits, and hang-ups behaviors, then we need to find power somewhere else. And we, of course, we know that's God. To accept God as a higher power, we have to realize that we are not in control of some aspects of our lives. Tough to do when you're sitting over here going, I don't need anyone. I can do it on my own. I'm smarter than most people. I can fool most people. I can quit when you hear all the omnipotent thinking that we have all said, right? You know, we have this fantasy of grandiosity. How many of us, and we're, well, for you, they're still out there doing it, but how many of us, we just have this, we had this fantasy of grandiosity. I mean, I've known gambling addicts are just so proud of how smart they are, how they beat the odds. Well, they really didn't. They actually lost a whole bunch of money, but once in a while they beat the odds, right? We have this defiance of reality. And so I love this, that Dr. Tursky tells a story about this executive officer, high-end chief executive officer, lost everything because he couldn't quit drinking. He would go to the bar, crying his beer about how nobody's hiring him. He's all this special everything. He has all this awesome executive background. People should be honored to have him. You hear the omnipotence again. They should be honored to have him working for them, but nobody's hiring him. So he gets caught again, has to go to rehab. He gets out, he's at a halfway house, and he still thinks that people, you know, he obviously thinks he's better than they all are. They're all messed up. He was a chief executive officer. He doesn't know all this stuff, you know. He was important, blah, blah, blah. And you know what finally hit him? He was checking into the halfway house, and he emptied his one pants pocket for him, and he had 12 cents and a trouser button in it. The other pocket had nothing in it. You know what he realized? I have no keys to anything. I don't have keys to a car. I don't have keys to a house. I don't have keys to an office. I have nothing. And that's when he finally realized, that's when he was finally able to let go of his omnipotence and realize how screwed up his life was. Isn't it funny how we do that? We work so hard to protect our addictions. We work so hard to keep them alive and well. I mean, we got to understand that at some point our bodies become physically addicted. It isn't like we even have a choice in the matter after a while. And grandiosity and delusions, omnipotence, all that stuff, it all goes together, right? And what is it? It's our desperate attempts to convince ourselves that we're not impotent. So let's look at how impotent we really are. Right? Can you defy gravity right now? No. Can you go to the grocery store and determine the price of food? No. Can you change other laws of nature? No, you can't do any of that. If you drink too much, what's going to happen to you? It's the law of nature, right? If I'm on the computer till 3 in the morning looking at porn, eventually something bad's going to happen to me. I got to sleep at some point, let alone all the stuff that distorts my brain. The fact is, we don't have a lot of control over a lot of things. But if we really get it, if we really understand that, it's okay. Because last I checked, at least I hope, is that we believe that God's in control. And that's a whole lot better way to go. Dr. Tversky, again, that quote here, people who feel good about themselves are not usually threatened by an awareness of their impotence, right? So the examples I just gave, I'm assuming most of us are going, well, yeah, I mean, gravity, I don't have control in that. Or if I go to the grocery store, I'm not going to tell them what the prices are, correct? So you go, okay, yeah, you're right. But when people have no self-esteem, which again, of course, as addicts, we have none, we loathe ourselves. When we feel inadequate, incompetent, worthless, then we find we must protect ourselves against what we see as another put down, the inability to control our addictions. Pretty tough to do, isn't it? I'm going to come back here and quote my favorite author right now, Russell Brand, in his recovery stuff, and so he's talking about him. He goes, "Me, with my proclivity for grandiosity, I will always favor sweeping change and grand revolutions, wild and wordy statements of intent, martyrdom and marvels. This, though, is the time for humble offerings, for silent acts of loving defiance. The love is the defiance. Become what you are supposed to be, unbounded, hack through the erroneous codes of your malignant program that says, I must be perfect, I must be omnipotent, I must be brilliant, because if I don't, I'm not a person. When the fact is, the humble people are the one that are so much happier. We defy them through our kindness. We defy them by reaching out a hand in love. We defy them and by loving them, by knowing there is no them. There's nothing to get. There's nowhere to go. The only love is real, and we prove this with our lives. Sounds pretty good, doesn't it, if you think about it? End of the day. So the truth is, when we're addicted, the way of the self leads only to suffering. The way of love is salvation. That's what it means. So we could go through the guilt, shame, perfection, all that stuff. But the only way we can do this is we've got to get ourselves in support groups to let down our omnipotence, to be vulnerable. You know, I love Dr. Tversky's quote. He goes, in recovery, we have to learn that not only that it is all right to be human, but the greatest achievement of all is to be a fine human being. Really, that's all we got to do. That's all we got to do to recover. We don't have to be rich. We don't have to be famous. We don't have to be perfect. We can make mistakes. What we really are after is to be a fine human being. Russell Brand, again, I shared his quote last week, but it's worth hearing again. When I listen to other men read their inventories, detailed accounts of their pain and shame, I feel my love flow out. I feel warmly connected to them. My innate tendency to self-obsession abates. In these relationships, we are built on mutual vulnerability and a willingness to help one another. I am invited into unexplored aspects of myself. Which is what he's saying is, I let go of my omnipotence. Because trust me, if you read his book, you'd see he had a lot of omnipotence. So a healthy look at this is, I'm addicted. I don't want to stay there, but I'm addicted. I'm not perfect, and it's okay. I need to focus on the process of recovery. I have a purpose in my life that gives me some motivation at some level. I have healthy people in my life, which would include people, again, who are not psychologically superior. It just means they care what's best for me. So they're willing to tell me when I'm being dumb. But they're also there to help me when I need it, and they're there to help me when I'm doing well. I can at least for a moment at least consider that there is a God out there and that God loves me? I understand recovery thinking. And you know what? It's okay to be successful. Because you know what? When we're addicted in our omnipotence and impotence, sometimes we don't see that. So I'm going to close with Dr. Tversky's quote. People who feel good about themselves are not usually threatened of their impotence. Right? When I'm feeling okay, I make a mistake. I go, I made a mistake. When I'm not feeling okay about myself, that is not the case. But when people have no self-esteem, when they feel inadequate, incompetent, and worthless, they must protect themselves against what they see as another put down, the inability to control our addictions. Building self-esteem, create a passionate purpose, connect with healthy people, and turn our life and will over to God can help us overcome this subtle yet powerful threat. So I hope this week we can consider looking at ourselves. Do I live my life with omnipotence? Which I'm really hiding is my feelings of impotence. If so, it's okay. You don't have to be perfect, and God loves you. So, again, thank you for joining today. Again, NorthStar Community, we meet at 6:30 on Friday nights with a full meal. I always like to tell people that. A motivation to come. Come casually dressed. Don't have to dress up. You can come however you want. If you're coming from work, you can still have those work clothes on. We'll still like you. Don't have to just be in shorts and T-shirts. We meet on Wednesday nights at 6:30 as well here for more detailed, a little more detailed subjects. We meet at 9:30 on Sunday mornings, and then we have our service at 11:15, which I see on the website. I need to fix that. So anyway, you're welcome to come. Also, anytime you want to call me, 804-746-5081. Or you can email me at csimpson@wgva.church. So I thank you for joining. I think it's an exciting journey to become aware of the things we do to keep ourselves addicted. I think it's such an important way to recover. So we always close with the prayer of serenity. And like I'd like to tell people, if we would just live this prayer, our lives would be so much easier. It really would. So let's close with the prayer of serenity. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardships as a pathway to peace. Taking, as Jesus did, the sinful world as it is, not as I would have it. Trusting that Jesus will make all things right if I surrender to his will. That I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with him forever in the next. Amen. Again, thank you for joining us, and look forward to joining you next week, and I hope you all have a great week. Thanks.